Hello guys, here we have with us Salted Pepper and we are going to talk a bit about the map Canberra, one of the maps for the tournament. So, hello Salted Pepper. thank
Hello.
you thank you for joining us. Before we dive into the strategy, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your career as a player?
So I'm basically known as Salsa Pepper. I'm a Dutch AOE player, kind of hovering around 2K, 1v1 ELO. And I recently started participating in more tournaments such as Outback Rumble, Dutch Open, Open Classic, and stuff like that. And recently I've been getting more into it and trying to look to improve as a player. And that's basically what I'm up to.
Okay. So, the map today is Canberra. Could you give us a little bit of a rundown on how the map looks and typical strategies that you could go for in this map?
So Canberra is a map that is very different from many other maps that you might have seen before. There's many factors to kind of account for. I'm just going to focus on 3 points mainly. First of all, you'll find out that a map is significantly smaller than the standard 1v1 map. The edges are kind of cut off and blacked out, so you won't be playing on that, making the map significantly smaller. On top of that, there is like a small hideout like base. You start with palisade, pretty basic resources in it. But in between that, there is basically a canal connecting both players. And in this canal, there's only one fish, but it's very significant to note that this fish has 30k food in it. So that's definitely worth to contest and kind of think about that in the long run. So for what you could expect of the map, expect a whole lot of fighting for map control, as the map is very small, the resources are pretty limited, and there is even more limited space, or even less space, I should say, because of the unbuildable terrain at some parts of the center of it.
So, what are the most important things that a newer player should know for this map? What do you think it is?
The most important thing to note about this map, in my opinion, is that it's very cramped for space, and you need to make sure you play like that too. Try not to end up being on the defensive too quickly, because if you get locked in with a few towers or maybe a few castles, you could very quickly find yourself running out of resources or even space for farm. I also think it's very important to note that although the fish in the middle is a very relevant factor, because there's so little land left, you need to make sure that you can't just control that little pond, and you really need to get out on the map and make sure everything is safe. And on top of that, even if you control the fish, even if you control the water, it's very easy to harass from land. There's a limited amount of fishing ships that kind of fit around the fish in the middle. So make sure you don't overinvest on that, and make sure you plan ahead for the long run of the game.
So you said that the map is a little bit cramped up. Everything is really in the middle. What do you think that should be the civilization picks for this one?
It's an interesting query, to be honest. I think you definitely want some civs to chime in feudal and castle age. I think there will be a lot of castle age fighting on, but you also need to be careful because you're so close. You might be protected by palisade walls, but because of the short distance, feudal rushes can still be effective. So think about things like man-at-arm towers and whatnot. And there's some civs that shine at contesting water, getting a good start, and doing a follow-up, such as Japanese. But then there's also civs that really like a castle unique unit follow-up, such as Turks, that definitely have potential on this map. So honestly, this map has a lot of ways you can play it. There's very little things that cannot work out, but you need to think really well about how it will interact with your opponent's plan.
So imagine that one of the players decides to go for a castle age, a heavy aggression, and he basically gets castle before you. I don't know, but he has the middle for himself, and now you're on the defensive. What could be a pick for to counter this kind of playstyle?
So on a very technical level, if the player playing feudal should generally control the middle, so you should make sure you have some pressure on the map to make sure you either have map control or your castle age first. So that's kind of the first and foremost important thing. In case an opponent is able to get pressure on the map and going for forward castles, you need to make sure that you really manage to spread out to the other side of the map. But like I said, it's very tricky on this map because although you can kind of rotate with the map and find more space, the farm space is very limited because there's lines of unbuildable terrain. So your farm space is going to run out. You're very quickly going to run into the base of your opponent. And you can also be very close on one side to each other. So really take a good look at a map. Make sure you find a position where you can actually hold and keep map control, because if you get pushed around, you're very quickly going to get back at a point where you started and your opponent will just be waiting for you.
So, as you know, many players from our tournament are low elo players. Given that situation, what do you think that should be the build orders that the players should try to invest in so that they manage to do something to make something happen on this map?
I think that there's two things that are pretty common on this map. And first of all, there could be something like Man at Arm Towers. So I think it's very worthwhile to kind of know how that opening works, but also to know how to defend against that. So I think that will be very solid practice. Second option is kind of fast castle into unique unit. Can be very dominant, but again, you need to be very careful. If there's people thrashing you, you need to make sure that you are able to defend. But if you can get it off successfully, it can really pay off on this map.
So lastly, you've had some experience with this map on the Outback Ramble, if I'm not wrong. And I know that it is a map you find really interesting. But I find this map actually a little bit funny because it has so many things that could happen. To be honest, what I think when I this is my point of view. I think that I would probably try to make a. This is completely trolly and no one follow me. I'm not the pro player here. Salted Pepper is. But I would probably do a dock with a transfer ship and douche my opponent. That would be my approach probably. But you, since you are a better player than me, what would be your trolley approach for this map if you had one?
Ooh, a trolley approach. I definitely think that something with a transport chip could be very, very interesting, especially if you do get some sort of voodoo control. I actually, in Outback Rumble, I believe that we saw a player actually going for a douche on this map. So that was very interesting to say the least. But a personal favorite of me, it isn't 100% raw, but something like Monk play and pushing on these kind of maps can always be very tricky to deal with. And especially with the new civs like Bohemians, I think you can make a real fiesta out of that.
Thanks a lot, Salted Pepper. It is really appreciated by us. And oh well, I hope you enjoy to watch the tournament as much as we do.
Sure, I will.